I know the administration is looking at a plan B. And unfortunately, let's go back, just take a step back for 1 second and realize that student loans have become politicized, right? So borrowers are confused. Am I not going to pay it back? Am I paying it back? What's going on?
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to Watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Well, you recently heard there was a huge setback to the current administration's plan to forgive student loan debt. The Supreme Court struck it down, basically said the president does not have authority to unilaterally give debt forgiveness to millions of student loan borrowers. If you recall, during the global pandemic, the repayments of these loans were suspended. I mean, we're talking $1.5 trillion, nearly $2 trillion worth of debt. The president announced a plan that he was going to forgive a number, hundreds of thousands of people's student loan debt. It went to court. He lost. And now we're back to square one. But more importantly is, what effect does this have on you? What effect will it have on the economy? And our good friend, Paul Oster, is with us now. And Paul, it's great to have you back on. You're the credit expert here. I mean, you know that this is going to have a huge impact. What's your take on it? What do you think is going to be the impact of this, Paul?
So we already know from certain surveys that have been done, and it was millions of borrowers, a certain percentage of those borrowers will not make the first payment that comes due in October, right? So they start the clock back on September 1, interest will start to accrue, first payments will be due October 1st, and borrowers are going to miss the first 30-day payment. And the other side of the coin here is not having any of that debt canceled will equate to higher credit card debt for a certain amount of the other borrowers. And as soon as you start taking up on credit card debt, your credit scores come down. So it's going to cost them, more for everything else. So this is a credit killer. It's a 1-2 punch for sure. Between the late payments, between the higher credit card debt, it's going to have a tremendous impact on the economy. Now, I'm not saying that, they should have forgiven the debt. They shouldn't have forgiven the debt. It's way above my pay grade. But what I do know in terms of the impact on the economy and consumers' credit, this will not be a good thing. Now, does the economy need to slow down anyway? Does this have some type of benefit indirectly? Maybe it does.
All right. So, and I should note your firm is called Better Qualified. You're in New Jersey, but you work around the country. And so it's somewhere around $15 billion a month in payments that will start flowing into the government. But a substantial number of these people have already spent that money, if you will, or counted on not having to make any repayment. So there's going to be a huge number of defaults. So effectively here, they've just kicked the can down the road, haven't they?
They sure have. When you start, again, these early 30-day late payments, we already see the uptick on auto payments. These are typically the early bellwethers of a downturn in the economy. So we see the uptick in pre-foreclosures. We see the uptick in auto payments. You're going to see it in student loans. So it's not a good situation. And now what will happen also is you will effectively remove a couple of million borrowers from the housing market from buying a car, because this will destroy their credit. They will not be in a position to obtain any type of financing. So this is definitely going to have a negative impact.
So potentially this could be have many more times the effect of a Federal Reserve rate hike, couldn't it?
It sure could. It sure could. Now, look, I don't think anybody would argue with suspending the payments during the pandemic. These young borrowers were in some of the worst positions coming out of school. The job market was obviously crushed. So suspending the payments during the pandemic was a good move. Trying to forgive that much debt after the pandemic under, a loosely associated the HEROES Act of 2003, it just didn't. I didn't think there was any way that the Supreme Court was going to, uphold it. And here we are.
So the solution's going to have to come from Congress. And maybe this is a good time to revisit the entire student loan scheme. All right. The fact that it's the only type of debt virtually out there, with some other exceptions, but the only type of debt that is non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. Maybe it's time for Congress to say, you know what, a student loans, especially if the person never graduated from college, got the value that they were seeking, maybe this is the time to revisit this, and maybe it's going to result in forgiveness. But on the other hand, you got to be sympathetic to the people who either paid for their college in whole or paid back their student loans, spent 10 years paying them back. And then is that fair to them to see millions of people have their loans forgiven just for showing up?
Yeah. I mean, there are already income-based repayment plans. There are pay-as-you-go plans. There are service loan forgiveness that if you work for a government agency or a nonprofit for 10 years, after the 10 years, then it's forgiven. So those types of incentives are still here, and borrowers need to be very proactive. But what I've been trying to do is just get the message out there. You can't wait until September 1. It'll be here in a blink of an eye, October 1. You have to have a plan in place and figure this out. It's not just going to go away. So do something. When was the last time you logged in to your student loan account? Do you even know what the principal balance is? Do you know what those monthly payments are going to look like? When they start to kick in. So be proactive. Go to studentaid.gov. Studentaid.gov is the only website, the only place borrowers should go to get information. As you know, Kerry, what's going to happen is you're going to have all these bad actors jumping in here. It's a perfect time for them to prey on these borrowers who are very, very susceptible right now. They're panicking. So you're going to have people wind up getting, caught up in scams and fraud and situations like that because they're so vulnerable right now. So studentaid.gov is the only website a borrower should go to. And again, there are repayment plans out there that are going to be directly correlated to your current income. So you have to figure it out.
So what do you think? What do you think is going to be the upshot of this? I mean, you being not being a gambler as such, but knowing the magnitude of the problem out there and how many people will be suffering as a result. Where do you think this is heading?
So again, that's only time is going to tell that. But I know the administration is looking at a plan B. And unfortunately, let's go back. Just take a step back for 1 second and realize that student loans have become politicized, right? So borrowers are confused. Am I not going to pay it back? Am I paying it back? What's going on? And of course, human nature says, let's hope for the best, right? They're going to get this through and I'm not going to have to pay back maybe all of my student loan or $10,000, $25,000 worth of the student loan. It's going to significantly decrease my payments. And these are just carrots that have been, hanging out there, being dangled in front of these students, causing confusion. So the politics behind this, ongoing debacle is not a good thing for anybody. So what happens, moving forward? We know there will be X amount of defaults. We know there's going to be X amount of late payments. We know they're going to carry higher credit card debt because of the student loan debt. And again, what I am saying that is this is a real 1-2 punch killer for these young people because they don't have a long credit history. Mm-hmm. So student loans are very powerful helping these young people build their credit. But it's gone in the blink of an eye with one 30-day late payment. You know, you could lose, a young person like that could lose 50, 75, 100 points off their credit scores. So this is not a good situation.
No, to say the least. It's a nightmare scenario. People who've been trying to do the right thing, the government gives them this relief, and it's questionable whether they really have the authority to do that in the first place, but nobody seems to be challenging that, right? So, you know, you got to wonder, the government has caused this mess, so they need to settle the problem. They need to solve it, right? Congress needs
and go back to what you were saying before. You don't solve it by forgiving the debt that's already been obtained, right? Because that's not fair to a guy like me who paid my student loans back. You know, I didn't come from a high net income family. I had to pay my student loans back. And what about the students that invest in trade schools and try and start their own businesses? You know, where do you draw the line? So you draw the line in, you signed a contract for these student loans. Why does it cost so much money? Some of these universities have, you know, endowments that are the size of countries' GDP. I mean, it's just an amazing situation that universities have become these powerful financial vehicles. So how did we get here in the first place? The universities are charging way too much in room, board, and tuition, and it's offset. It's kind of like the healthcare industry. They charge that because they know that these students are going to be able to get financing to pay for it. So there really has to be we've got to peel back the onion all the way and kind of almost start over and then, you know, deal with the problem. But, you know, canceling the debt is not solving the problem.
Yeah, definitely not. And, well, I guess we're going to find out. You know, Congress got us into this mess, and Congress, it's up to Congress to get us out, right?
That's a scary thought, Kerry. You don't have a good track record. They have a great track record in getting us into messes, but they don't have a great track record in getting us out. And certainly not without causing pain somewhere else or just, like you had said, just kicking the can down the road.
You know, and what you were saying about these large college institutions here creating this problem, you know, they're the beneficiaries of it, right? I mean, they benefit from the problem that was created here. Yeah. And so you can't just let them off the hook and say they have no, you know, they become these wealthy institutions here, you know, as a result of government largesse. So they got to be part of the solution, and they have to bite the bullet here, right?
There's no doubt. There's no doubt that they have to be held accountable and also participate in how we move forward.
Right. Could not agree with you more. Hey, just tell us again where we find you, how we connect with you on the web, and what else you can do.
Yeah, listen, just go to betterqualified.com. You can ask questions anonymously. You can get access to different self-help guides. You can speak to one of our credit experts to figure out, you know, what's the best way to move forward. We can suggest debt management programs to kind of deal with all your other debt. You know, like you had said, if it's a federal student loan, there is no, you know, even if you filed for bankruptcy, it will be excluded. So we have to look at this holistically for each consumer. So just go to betterqualified.com, set up a brief phone call, and the consultation and analysis is always free. And let's figure out if we can provide any sort of relief and assistance.
All right. Hey, we really appreciate you coming on as always, Paul. If you got a question for Paul, myself, KL@kerrylutz.com, just shoot us an email. Leave your comments on the YouTube channel below if you're watching us there. And make sure go over to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Show notes to this interview. Paul's link will be there. Paul, always a pleasure. Thanks for stopping by.
Thanks for having me back on.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.